our brains are being hijacked by our society into a pathological engagement. Our brains are occupied territory. It's now being brought to our attention by a number of people that our attention is being colonized, right? And once that happens, we lose ourselves. And now that's happening to our younger generation, and it is devastating because this works so well. I've got two grandchildren, and they're just drawn to these digital devices. It's magical. And as soon as their eyes are riveted on that panel, their attention is being recruited by forces way beyond their control. And that is where they begin to lose themselves. This is where they ought to be very much engaged at the human level with the people around them and other children. They're now glued to the devices. I just read an item, I think something like 40% of 4-year-olds already have access to a tablet. This is sheer lunacy. This is just absolute lunacy. And it's the wisdom of the Waldorf school that this needs to be absolutely categorically resisted, because they try to give the child a much more natural upbringing with the mysteries, right? The fairy tales of our history and so forth. Where this makes it enormously difficult for us to, our rescue remedy with neurofeedback should only be needed by a subset of people. But we're all now afflicted. This is we're not at home in this society. There's a much larger critique to be had here. We're a species in captivity. We're in captivity that we have ourselves created, right? We have willingly created this world in which we are the most captive, and it's very hard for us to get out of this, right? It's now going to take something very deliberate at many levels. Now, neurofeedback may be the enabling therapy to allow people to see the world as it is, their own world as it is. But it's going to take societal change to recognize what we're doing to ourselves. So we're a species in captivity. Our waking brains are occupied territory. We're living in essentially a modern plantation economy. So that's the larger scene. And as someone said, it's not enough to be well regulated in a pathological society. We have to address individual solutions are necessary but not adequate, right? We need to address problems at the societal level. The fact that we are now in such social division in this country is just a symptom of that. This is completely unnatural, and it's a consequence of our plantation economy, right? This is all being orchestrated. It is to be so divided in this country is not our natural state.
Yeah, when you say a modern plantation economy, what do you mean by that?
Okay. It is the United States version of a feudal economy, right? Where you're essentially locked into a world that gives you ever fewer choices to make, and this is now becoming very apparent to people. The multiplicity of ways in which they are constrained and choices to choices that they don't want to be making, and so increasingly we're in a society with under top-down control, right? That is pervasive, and humanity does not allow humanity to flourish as it should.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of what would it take to create a society or move us towards a society that would allow us to flourish and would allow us to regain some of those lost freedoms?
Uh, I the essence is we need to move back toward communalism, toward communal arrangements. Or we moved toward the nuclear family, and then the nuclear family fissioned, and
I've never heard it described that way, but that is hilarious.
yeah,
That is very spot on.
right.
I need a physicist for that one, but yeah, that's great.
So so we're not in a good place, and yet we're still living in this illusion that we've made the choice to be this way. No. Uh, so, and I don't know how you get there with a society as it is structured, but the family, we're not in a friendly status. We're not in a child friendly status. This has to change. This has to change. We can't solve the problems just with neurofeedback, as wonderful as it is.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I agree with you. I'm really curious about this because this is something that, and I love that you called it communalism, because it's something that I see like living in the Pacific Northwest and having friends in Portland and having friends in multiple different communities. And a lot of people out here, compared to when I was growing up in Southern California, there's a strong emphasis on community that I notice out here and how people operate. Not everywhere, not in every piece, but just in how they operate. Like I notice that there's a lot more effort with a lot of different people to, I want to say, intentionally not use Uber. Not because Uber is a bad service, but because one of the consequences that has come up of like capitalism that I think is really astute by my friend Matt mentioned this, is that like we stop asking our friends for rides, right? And then the consequence of, well, I don't have to ask my friend for a ride because I can get an Uber really easily, is now, well, I don't ride with my friend to the airport. And then we don't connect on the way to the airport. And then when he doesn't drop me off at the airport and I get back, I don't invite him over for dinner because he didn't take me to the airport. And so we don't have that dinner that we had, and we don't build a deeper relationship. And so there's all of these like little layers of, on one hand, we get these benefits of these independent things, but then there's this long-term consequence we don't really see in the relationships that are formed and not missed when we don't do those things.
yeah, yeah. Um, right, and somehow, this has to come from the bottom up, and that's not easy. But we're already in Southern California seeing people move out into smaller communities because they find out that they can make a living, their professional world can continue, while they themselves live in a more humane environment. But of course, the problem is nationwide. I just think uh, we're seeing, we may be seeing just the existing structure failing, and I think it really does have to fail. It's a grim thought at one level, because this is going to be painful, and not looking forward to that. But it would not happen except under duress, right? We have to be forced to change. We're clearly dealing in a very pathological world right now.
Yeah, well, and it makes sense too when you say, I actually really love, and I think it's a beautiful example of, the nuclear family and then, fission. And then in that state of fission, there's a ton of chaos, right? Which I think is part of the reality. There might be some order on like some deep level that's all, happening in some whatever, but like there's ultimately just all this chaos. We have to wait for that period of chaos to end before a new thing kind of emerges from that. And when you're talking about these constraints economically or whatever's going on, it's, like, if I can give you a positive lens or borrow my hopelessly optimistic, personality, there's parts of me that I see those constraints almost already happening in some ways, right? Where I see some of people that I know or friends that I know who are, not buying the second lawnmower, but are borrowing it from a friend, right? And we're starting to see some of these things, like, to your point, from these constraints that are uncomfortable or whatever, but it's also leading to, I think, more people hopefully coming together. I see more people having dialogues that they weren't having 4 or 5 years ago. I see these conversations that people just were avoiding that. Now they're willing to confront, because to your point, there's a little bit of external pressure to have them. But I don't know. I think something I deeply always have had faith in, and I think continue to have faith in, is in humanity functionally. And I think humans, we have a tendency to figure it out. And if there's one thing that we've done over and over again, it seems to be figure it out once we've run into a wall. But we figure it out eventually, I think.
Uh, yes. So, in my little microcosm of the universe, I see more people greeting each other on the sidewalk. Uh, so that's the beginning of a change, and it's generational. The older people tending to greet each other. The younger generation is still, not quite there. Uh, right now, we're dealing with a pervasive pathology in our younger generation. What they're dealing with is they're not capable of mastering it. Right? We're seeing anxiety conditions that we've not seen before. We've seen a propensity towards suicide that we've never seen before. So we have an enormous problem for which our work presents the potential remedy. Now, we, my challenge is now to move from the highly personal engagement at length over many sessions with the severely traumatized brain, nervous system, to where we deal with the broader reality of people who are not so severely afflicted, but could definitely significantly benefit.